Rachel stood under the flickering streetlight, her breath visible in the cold night air. The city was unusually quiet, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by an eerie silence. She checked her watch. 11:55 p.m. Her friend's party had run late, and now she just wanted to get home. Her phone's battery was on its last legs, and she was relieved when a taxi rounded the corner, its headlights piercing the darkness. She waved it down, and it rolled to a stop in front of her. The driver, an older man with a gaunt face and sunken eyes, nodded as she climbed into the back seat. "Where to?" he asked, his voice a gravelly whisper. Rachel gave him her address and settled into the seat, her mind wandering. The city lights blurred into streaks as they drove through the streets, the rhythmic hum of the engine lulling her into a false sense of security. After a while, she noticed they were taking a different route than usual. The buildings grew sparser, the streets darker. She leaned forward. "Excuse me, but this isn't the way to my place." The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry, we'll get there." A shiver ran down Rachel's spine. She glanced at her phone, but the battery had finally died. She was on her own. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I really think you're going the wrong way." The driver didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The cityscape gave way to a desolate industrial area, the buildings looming like silent sentinels. The taxi slowed and turned onto a narrow, dimly lit street lined with abandoned warehouses. Fear gripped Rachel's heart. She fumbled with the door handle, but it was locked. "Let me out," she demanded, her voice shaking. The driver's lips curled into a thin smile. "It's not safe out there," he said. "Trust me, you're better off inside." Panic surged through her. She pounded on the partition. "Stop the car, let me out." The driver ignored her, the taxi continuing down the narrow street. Rachel's mind raced, searching for a way out. She noticed a small hammer attached to the inside of the cab, meant for breaking windows in emergencies. She grabbed it and swung at the window, but it barely made a scratch. The driver's smile widened, revealing yellowed teeth. "That won't work," he said calmly. "These windows are reinforced." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. She looked around, desperate for any means of escape. The taxi came to a stop in front of an old, decrepit warehouse. The driver turned to face her, his eyes dark and empty. "End of the line." The locks clicked open, and the driver stepped out, walking around to her door. Rachel braced herself, ready to fight, but he wrenched the door open with surprising strength. He grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the cab and onto the cold, wet ground. She struggled, kicking and screaming, but his grip was like iron. He dragged her toward the warehouse, its doors creaking open as if welcoming them. The interior was pitch black, the air thick with the smell of decay. Rachel's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she saw them. Rows of old taxis, their paint peeling, their windows shattered. And there, in the center of the room, a large, ornate mirror. The driver's grip tightened as he pushed her toward the mirror. "Look," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. Rachel resisted, but he forced her to face the mirror. She stared at her reflection, her own terrified eyes staring back. But then, the reflection changed. Her image warped and twisted, her face contorting into a silent scream. The driver's reflection stood behind her, his eyes glowing with a sinister light. She tried to turn away, but her reflection reached out, cold hands gripping her shoulders. The mirror seemed to pull her in, her body stretching and distorting as she was sucked into the glass. Her screams echoed in the emptiness, fading into silence. The driver watched impassively as the mirror returned to normal, showing only his own reflection now. He turned and walked back to his taxi, the doors of the warehouse closing behind him. The engine roared to life, and he drove off into the night, disappearing into the city's labyrinthine streets. Rachel was never seen again. The abandoned warehouse remained silent, its secrets hidden behind the mirror's glass. The taxi, its driver ever searching, prowled the city's dark streets, waiting for the next unlucky fare at midnight.